Thank you very, very much. And I would like to thank Traders Talk Live for this opportunity. And I always like to have a joke when when I ask if people can hear me, and I would please put yes if you can hear me, and put no if you can't. I don't know why. I have enjoyed that joke for my entire life. But one of the things that I'm going to be asking in the way I do is I'm going to make the presentation first, and then afterwards I will take questions. You're welcome to write in questions before, but I found over time that I answer a lot of questions as it goes along. So if you'll bear with me on that. The big question is here. Almost everybody that I work with knows how to trade. They're stuffed full of knowledge. They have all the stuff. Man, they have it coming out of their trading rooms. But the question is can they trade? They have the knowledge of trading, but when put to the test with capital at risk, can you trade? That's what we're going to be looking at here. We're going to say, how do you actually go and build a disciplined and patient mind for dealing with uncertainty? It's not by just simply wishing that you could have that. It's not by some magic formula. It's not by some magic knowledge. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at this and learning how to work with it. So let's start this. Ultimately, many traders come to trading with a winning attitude. They've learned that their whole time. The thing is, you've got to think positive, you've got to really work hard, you've got to make things happen. And they have experienced good success in their past. They may be coming out of business or corporate, or they have done well with that winning attitude stuff. They feel really good. So they come into trading and go, okay, I'm going to take this attitude, and it's going to be the thing that makes the big difference. I know that a lot of people come into trading and blow up, but you know something? I've got the winning attitude. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. However, what they discover very quickly is that those become very old ways, and what they discover, working hard, making things happen, is not going to work. As a matter of fact, even more knowledge, even more all that, you get paralysis by analysis. And you go, well, what's happening here? I've got the attitude, I work hard, I'm making things happen, and what happens is that my trading account is not lying to me. It's telling me the truth, and no matter how much knowledge I have, no matter how much I can talk about trading and sound really good, when it comes to actual putting money at risk, all that knowledge flies out of my mind, and suddenly I'm no longer the kind of trader I need to be when I'm trading. And that's when we look at it and go, old ways are not going to open these new doors. No, they're not. No, they're not. Ultimately, this is where very smart, logic-driven traders get stuck, and they stay. And what they really discover is that, the mind that I brought to trading is not going to be the mind that brings success in trading. This is one of the big things that you have to really grasp, is that there is a fundamental paradigm shift in the way you think, the way you perceive, that's going to have to happen. And let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at what has to happen. Fundamentally, you come stock with a certainty-based mind. Okay? That's from evolution. Our ancestors really wanted to control outcome. They wanted to control environment. It got wired into us to be certainty-based. We want to control that outcome. Yet what happens is trading, that world doesn't exist. Ultimately, what happens in trading, it is a probability-based mind. And that probability-based mind, you discover something, is that your control over outcome is an illusion. And what you also discover is this, is that your biology and your psychology are going to be dead set against you changing your ways to transform your thinking. Ultimately, what you discover is this. The problem is that you change the way your brain reacts to uncertainty as threat. In this little diagram right here, what you're looking at is you're looking at one of our ancestors, and all of a sudden he sees something. He sees an object in the environment, and all of a sudden that brain is telling his heart Get ready for action. Understand that woolly mammoth may be a long ways off, but what happens is that for survival's sake, for survival instincts, there's an automatic triggering that just runs right through the thinking brain. It doesn't even get that knowledge. It runs through and says, oh my God, there's an alert, there's a biological threat here, and suddenly you're in fight flight. If you have ever had problems pulling the trigger, if you have ever lost your composure while holding a trade, if you have ever had fear of missing out when something went a little profitable on you, if you have ever sit there and says, I'm going to give it some more room, I'm going to give it some more room, oh my God, it's blowing up on me, you have experienced the survival instincts kicking in, wiping out mine. The key is your brain sees capital risk as a threat to life, okay? And it's going to hijack the thinking, the rational mind in a heartbeat if you don't know what to do with it, okay? So ultimately, why? Because ultimately emotions are a lot different than what people think they are. We often think of emotions as feelings. Well, the feeling state of an emotion is one small component of the emotion. And all you're looking at is the way it feels. Actually, feeling is the chemistry of the emotion taking over mind. Okay? The chemistry is already flooded. Like if you've ever experienced fear, you have experienced cortisol. You've experienced cortisol changing a perfectly fine, sane mind into a fearful mind. If you have ever experienced like jumping into trades, you have experienced dopamine and testosterone taking over and making you feel overconfident and jumping into things that you never should. Ultimately, emotions are biological action potentials that coordinate action between you, the trader, and the environment called marketing. They trigger automatically. They happen before thinking occurs. You're waiting for thinking, assuming that you can push emotion away. You can't. If you push emotion away, it just simply becomes an 800-pound gorilla, just like in happening in here. You know, how many of you have said, I'm going to do it this time. I have a positive mind. I have a positive mind. I am a disciplined trader. I'm a disciplined trader. And then you met the uncertainty. And the uncertainty took on the form of a bear, a saber-toothed tiger. And suddenly you're running scared, or you're running in revenge. You're angry to force entry on the markets that has taken money from you. Until you can calm this down, this biological predisposition, and that has become psychological, you're going to be its victim. You can get as many free tokens as you can. You can get into trading rooms. You can develop all sorts of strategies. You can have the world's best methodology. But until you learn how to calm the survival instincts of the emotional brain down, you really haven't got the trading mind. Because understand, trading is a combination of your platform, your methodology, and your trading psychology, all those beliefs that you bring to the game. The real ones, not the ones you talk about. The real ones that cause performance and cause you to win or lose in your trading account. Those are the ones we're talking about. Because ultimately, what you discover is that all thinking is emotional state dependent, and what you have is a fear-based brain and mind by design. In this image from Inside Out, what you're looking at is anger, and you're looking at anger taking over mind. He's at the controls of the mind, and he gets angry. He's experienced threat, and his response, the emotional program of anger's response to that threat, that biological threat in its mind, is revenge. Okay? If you've ever revenge traded, you know exactly how this feels. So ultimately, survival instincts will hijack rational thinking unless you retrain the mind, okay? And it's not like you can just trick the mind, trick the brain. Ultimately, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find a system of change. And I promise you, if you're in this webinar today, you've tried. Who in here has not tried positive mental attitude? I'm a positive winner. Visualization. I'm going to visualize myself winning. I'm going to use affirmations. I'm a disciplined trader. NLP. I'm going to find an anchor, and I'm going to be able to conjure up an emotional state just, because of this language stuff. Tapping. That's the new one where people are saying I'm tap, 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 tap. Hypnosis. I'm going to hypnotize myself. I'm going to go to a hypnotist. I'm going to hypnotize myself into successful trading. Or that prosperity thinking, that mind over matter, okay? And my question to you, okay, not how you feel about all these different ways, but I'm saying, has it worked? Has it worked according to your trading account? That's the great equalizer right there, is your trading account. It's going to cut through all the stuff. If it works, what it's saying is the beliefs that you have about your ability to manage uncertainty that you are projecting onto the markets is effective at extracting capital out of the markets. It's not the truth. It's just effective for extracting capital out of the markets. If you're losing, it's just telling you that the beliefs that you're projecting about your ability to manage uncertainty really are not effective for extracting capital out of the markets. That's the bottom line. So if you work through all this, you go, well, what can I do? First of all, understand the world of trading. I'm using a cougar, a North American cougar, as an example of the ideal trader. The interesting thing about cougars is they do not stalk. They hunt a big animal. They hunt the white-tailed deer. What they do is they climb a tree, they get on a rock ledge, and they wait. They set up, they know the setup, they know exactly the habits of the deer. They know that at some moment a setup's going to happen, a deer's going to enter the trap, and then it springs. When it springs, and it's just sitting there like that cat on the left, it's just sitting there waiting patiently. But when it springs like the cat on the right, the fight doesn't go on forever. It happens in an instant. The cougar either breaks the deer's neck or the deer gets away. He doesn't chase. Okay, he cuts his losses. Okay, understand what we've said so far is the cougar is an enormously patient animal. He's an apex predator too. He's very disciplined, and he waits for the deer to set up. And when he takes his shot, if he misses it, he takes his loss early and fast and gets back and does it again. The deer gets away. Consequently, he has very little injury. Much like a good trader, limiting his losses takes very little injury to his trading account. Same thing. So what we're doing is that the cougar is waiting to see what the forest will give it. It's not trying to make something happen. It's waiting for the forest to say, this is what I'm willing to give you. This is the mind of the trader. And until you come to that moment, we have to start saying, well, how do I go about taking my mind that wants to win, that wants to make things happen, that has a sense of urgency, all those good things, all that, I want to control outcome, Randy. I mean, of course I do. And at the same time, what you discover is you can't control outcome. And, you are a very small fish in a gigantic ocean. Where you came from, you might have been a big fish in a small pond, but now what we're saying is, how do you transform this urgency to act into discipline, into the patient discipline? Now, that's what we want to look at, okay? First, you decide that you're willing and want to change the mind you bring to trading. That means that I'm tired of sitting here and losing, and you literally begin to ask yourself the question, how long can I sit here and bleed? How long does it take for me to recognize that the missing thing here is the mind that I'm bringing to trading? It's not my methodology, it's not my platform, it's the space between my two ears. And I'm tired of investing in keeping it and maintaining it the way it is because it's not working. And you go, okay, I'm at a point where I'm willing to do the hard work of changing my mind, okay, and changing the way it approaches uncertainty. And ultimately from there you go, in this particular case, what we do is we teach a 5-step process. It's very transforming, and it starts with emotional regulation, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then it moves to mindfulness, which is something that If you do not develop as a trader, you will remain victim to the comings and goings of emotions as they move through the trading mind as you engage uncertainty. The third thing that you're going to have to learn to do is discover the internal dialogue, the historical narrative that you have about winning and losing. Okay, I'm a winner, I have to win. Or if you've ever heard yourself beat yourself up after a loss, that's the internal narrative. That's your self-talk, and it reveals the beliefs that you really have about yourself and your ability to manage uncertainty. That's essential to get into that instead of avoid it. That's what most people do. And also, you begin to go, okay, yeah, I can hear that, and yeah, that's the bad news. I really don't like that. That's the dark side of the force. But then you have to go, how do I find the empowerment within me? Fortunately, your brain is a community of rival programs, emotional programs, that as you develop mindfulness, the observer, you can learn to reorganize into higher functioning far probability rather than certainty-based thinking. That's the key. More about that a little later. And then the fifth thing is you have to become intentional about the mind you bring to trading. The people that I teach, you know, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be kind of like doing a scan of themselves, both physically and mentally, and they're going to be asking the question, is my mind fit for trading today? And if they can't get that thing fit, if they can't get it in the right zone, they're not going to trade. They realize that, man, trading is a massive cognitive drain of energy, and you have to know how to manage and have to use the mind properly to work in probability. You can't fake it. So we now have this 5-step thing. Let's start with the first one, emotional regulation. You have to begin to understand what emotions are and what they aren't. They're not those touchy-feely things. And ultimately, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to learn how to manage emotions. You're not going to conquer them. You're not going to be able to deny them. You're not going to be able to overwhelm them. What you're going to do is become an intelligent consumer of emotion, even fear. Okay, even fear. What you discover when you become emotionally intelligent is that fear is natural. You need to have some fear if you're risking capital. But that fear does not need to grow to biological threat proportions. It needs to grow to concern. It needs to grow as a concern so that you're alert, you're ready, you're focused. So what you're doing is you're realizing that your IQ has very little to do with your success in trading. A lot of smart people lose a lot of money in trading all the time. However, trading is about developing your emotional intelligence. That's the key, friends. That's the key. You have to shift it from a certainty-based thinking rooted in fear to a probability-based thinking rooted in patient discipline. There you go. What happens when an emotion really triggers? You know, it's not like, by the way, just managing an emotion is not enough. You actually have to become the person who designs the emotions that show up to face uncertainty. More about that a little later. Ultimately, though, when you look at this, this is our deepest fear. Here's this caveman guy, and he is face to face with the saber-toothed tiger. And remember, those cats were on Earth 12,000 years ago. So genetically, this is just just a breath or two. Okay. Ultimately, he signals danger. Okay, in the same way that you would look at risking capital, that will signal danger to the emotional brain. Suddenly it goes into high alert. It's hyperactive. And it goes to hippocampus and it decides, is this a threat to right now? And to be honest with you, with an untrained brain, a threat of capital is a biological threat to the emotional brain. And all of a sudden it triggers, and before you know it, the emotion starts arousing. It goes down the fear corridor. It hits a particular threshold. It spins over into a feeling with all that chemistry, and before you know it, you're in fight, flight, and you're doing dumb, stupid things that you would never do in a rational moment. And yet, what this is about training, about how you take the emotional brain, calm it down so it doesn't hijack thinking brain. That's what it's all about, so that you can maintain the discipline, the impartiality, the patience to be able to trade in probabilities and not let the saber-toothed tiger on the loose. That's what has to happen in emotional regulation, okay? But how do you do that? You know, when I work with people, the very first thing they're going to be learning what's known as the relaxation response, where they're going to be learning to use their breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, and tension reduction. And they're going to be starting to put themselves into stressful situations like money at risk and trading, and they are going to start noticing how compromised their body and their emotions and their mind already is, because you can already feel the tension, the arousal of the emotion. You can already see that the breathing has stopped or has started being rapid. It's ramping up for fight flight. You're going to learn to counter that. And unless you do that, unless you can get to the calmer mind, okay, you never get to change the mind. This first step is literally regulation. So that's the first thing that has to happen. What's the second thing? Mindfulness. What you discover in mindfulness, we'll define mindfulness as simply, that's noticing what you notice. Suddenly what you discover is this, is that you and your thoughts aren't the same. You and your beliefs are not the same. And this thing that you call I, this self-identity, is really only one potential organization of a self. And that organization, that historical organization, occurred a long time ago before you could even think. It was very successful. It helped you survive. And now you've taken that old survival strategy and you've brought it to trading. It's a different world. It's a different environment. It doesn't work. You have to be able to step back out of that, and you have to have the tool of, okay, my thoughts and I are not the same, and I have the capacity as a human being to be designer of the emotional programs that create mind that engages uncertainty. Now you're talking with mindfulness, okay? And within that, what you discover, one of the big things, one of the big aha moments, is recognizing that your brain is actually a committee of rival emotional programs that duke it out for control of creating the mind that you bring to trading. You have the default programming. You have the one that was created in the beginning. No problem there, but it's not working in a world of probability. It was based on short-term survival of certainty. But you realize, oh my God, there's all these emotional programs being given voice in the mind that I need to start learning how to manage, and I need to reorganize into a different self, into a different presentation that engages the uncertainties. So from there, though, now you've gotten this ability to produce an observer, to be mindful. What are you going to start looking for? You're going to start looking for, in my business, you're going to start looking for the internal dialogue. And what you're going to discover, that's the one, like when you're having problems, like for instance, if you have problems like with anxiety and pulling the trigger and getting into trades, you'll hear this. Are you sure? Are you sure? Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. You know, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? You discover, oh my God, that dialogue's going on, and then you're going to find a very fearful part of the self, or maybe an angry part of the self, or you'll find a part of the self that wants to prove itself by jumping and making things happen. This is the historical internal dialogue, okay? Most of us hear it when we beat ourselves up, and what you discover is that it doesn't help. Then, what we discover within that, there's an inner critic. You will have heard the inner critic. It's the one that's judgmental. That's the one that's critical of you. That's the one that tempts you. You will also hear the adapted voice. That's the part that has the fear. That's the part that has the impulse. That's the part that gets angry. Okay? Those are the ones doing your trading now, but you need something else to be doing it instead. So, you've inherited these self-limiting beliefs from your history, okay? But it doesn't mean that you're stuck with them. This is only the default programming. Friends, there's good news. There's step 4. In step 4, what you're doing is you're awakening the elements of the empowered self. In the same way that there's fear and criticism living as emotional programs in the brain, so are there empowered elements that you can learn to bring forward into the working mind. And let's take a look at them. The first one is courage. Courage symbolically is that of a warrior. And what happens is you learn to have the courage to face your fears, to face your demons. That's a program that you can bring forward. Discipline, the ability to maintain order under pressure. That discipline is that of a ruler. Okay, imagine how Washington felt about crossing the Potomac that morning. I bet it was a tough one, okay? But he maintained order, and a nation was born because of it. Then there's always that caregiver, that self-compassion, that ability to self-soothe, to produce patience. That is one of the most missing parts of the trading mind there is. There, of course, that you're going to have fear. Of course, you're having anxiety. But to keep it on the level of concern rather than anxiety or fear, you're going to have to self-soothe, or the whole mind's blown apart with fight, flight. If you do those 3 steps well, you come to the moment of rational thinking, of the impartiality of a sage. That's the one that you can think clearly while you trade. These are emotional programs living in the brain that are given rise, okay, into the mind. And what you have to decide is that I'm going to make this intentional. I'm going to make this really happen. I'm no longer just going to show up with any old mind that could show up. I'm not going to just sit there and say, I'm going to wishful think myself into a good mind. What you're going to do, particularly if you're going and following one of my programs, either the group course or the individual program, you're going to learn as a process how to bring forward this empowered mind. That empowered mind, it's not magical. It's just that you're training it to be disciplined, patient, self-soothing, and impartial when you engage uncertainty. You're not falling into default programming. Okay, that's the big, huge key there. That's how you make the difference, is that right now, traders they blow up an enormous amount of capital before they realize that this is default programming going on. I really need to change the mind that engages uncertainty. My friends, my promise to you is this: uncertainty is a fact. In trading in particular, there is only an illusion of control, and the trading account busts that all the time. What you discover is that the moment that uncertainty triggers, confusion in the mind occurs, and that's a bad thing for the mind and the brain, because it feels vulnerable. That's just wiring. The default wiring is to go to fight, flight at the sense of vulnerability. That's your revenge trading. That's your fear of missing out. That's your fear of pulling the trigger. Okay? However, with training, with intention, you can train the mind at the moment of uncertainty, at the moment of confusion, at the moment of vulnerability. You can't change that, okay? That's part of trading. That's part of probability. That's part of uncertainty. However, what you can do, instead of letting the default programming that you arrived at the game with basically produce the performance, what you can do is you can train the mind to be able to engage that uncertainty, okay? From the discipline, from the courage, from the self-soothing, and the impartiality of the empowered mind. What you have then there, I like that. You have a mind that's focused not on outcome, but focused on the moment of process, on the moment of the mind there in the moment. That's what you can control. You can control the mind that controls process. If your methodology has an edge, and if your platform allows you to work with that methodology, this is the missing moment. This is the missing thing. Is that ultimately, most people, like when I will do workshops, I will ask the question, what are you thinking about when you're trading? And they'll say winning, 66%. But ultimately, you discover very quickly you can't control whether or not you win or not. You're already putting yourself in a very bad position. However, what you can control is the mind that you bring into the moment of performance. That's the intentional mind, friend. That's the performance mind. It can be taught, okay? And if you think about it, it's what sports psychologists are doing with elite athletes all the time. Like in golf, at the top end of golf is everybody can putt, everybody can drive, but there's very few moneyed players. The real key is they're learning, instead of thinking about winning the outcome, prevailing, what they're thinking about is focusing on performance, their process. They're totally focused there. They're in the moment. They're not thinking ahead about what could be. They're not thinking about what did happen. They're there in the moment. And they have their sports psychologist there to keep them focused on that. Okay? They're going to have their entourage and all that stuff, and they're also going to have the sports psychologist there to make sure that mind is trained, because you don't want to have a meltdown. You don't want to have an emotional hijacking in a moment where you're putting for big money. Same thing in trading. You know, you look at it and go, guys who want to hit that high level, they all have coaches, they all have mentors for the mental game, for the emotional game. And that's what we have here. Because ultimately, what we're doing here is we're saying this, is that ultimately the dragons, you don't have to worry about trying to avoid your dragons in trading. They're going to come out to meet you. Ultimately, this is about self-development. It's about self-growth and becoming the human being that turns toward those fears, turns toward those self-limiting beliefs, and masters them. Okay? You begin to look at the fears as something that you need to learn rather than avoid. You're no longer scared to lose. What you're doing is you're realizing that losing, you have to become an incredibly good loser in trading to become a winner. You redefine what winning means. It becomes performance. Okay? That's the big deal. And so you're sitting there and you go, this is a trainable process, okay? And you really begin to see that mistakes, breakdowns in your trading are simply, this is how you become aware of the problems in your trading. You know, you find out there's three big questions when you take a loss or something like that. You find out, well, excuse me, is this a method mistake? Is this a psychological mistake? Or is this just landing on the wrong side of probability? If you get past the method and the psychology, which can be worked on, and you come down to the probability, you go, okay, it's just probability. I take that setup again. Yeah, it's a valid setup. I need to be taking all my valid setups. And you move on. There's not a victim story. There's not a rebel story about getting it back. There's just a story of landing on the wrong side of probability and you moving on. That's trading, friends. So what I want to do is this. The last skill is intentionally building the committee of the mind. Okay? Ultimately, there is going to be a committee of the mind, depending on, in neurobiology, what they talk about in this internal dialogue, they say, yeah, well, what happens is that there are numbers of different points of view in the brain that are given rise. And you know, what I say is, no, there's a number of emotional programs in the brain that give rise to your thoughts. And the truth is under the circumstances of stress, of challenges, of uncertainty, there is going to be an organization that did occur for your mind. And the truth is, unless you change it, you're going to have the same kind of outcomes, no matter what your mantras, no matter what you do. You have to get in at the very base of that and say, I need to reorganize the very committee of my mind that engages uncertainty. Okay? With the empowered mind, you approach uncertainty from a position of discipline, of courage, of patience, and humility, rather than fear or anger, or doubt, or trying not to lose, or trying to win. You're not trying to prove anything. You're performing. Ultimately, and my question will be, you know something, this change is necessary. You can spend 3 to 5 years and burn out all of your capital, which is the normal route that traders take. I know people that take 10 years, 20 years. I know people who blow up $10,000, $15,000. I know people who've blown up millions of dollars. And ultimately it comes down to, you know, something I wish I'd gotten this earlier, is ultimately, unless I can build the mind that uses capital under stress of uncertainty, then the truth is all this other stuff is wasted. My knowledge is wasted. And my question is, how much money does it cost you already? Okay? What would it be like if you say, you know something, if I build the mind for management of uncertainty, what is that going to open for me? And that's what it's really about. Okay? So who's going to populate your trading committee? That's the deal. Are you happy with the one you have now and continuing doing what you're doing over and over again and skipping from teachers to methodologies and all around, only to discover is that the beginning and the ending is you. So we know that that's going to happen. And what I'd like to do is this, is that first of all, if you're interested in developing your psychology to be able to really perform this, I want you to go to my website, that's the one down there, and I want you to get my free ebook. Okay? It's free. What it does is it starts outlining what you need to be able to do to be able to design the mind for trading. Okay? It's free. Then what I want you to do is say, well, there's lots of other stuff here, Randy. There's lots of videos. I have over 100 videos on YouTube, my YouTube channel. People watch them. They can quote them better than me. I have tons of articles on my website. Do the reading. Really get into this. Start learning about the mind. Okay? But when you finally get there, you also say, well, he's got a book too. Yeah, get my book. It'll blow your mind. It's just like eye-opening. Most people say, Randy, you know, that the entire books is all yellow and then underlined. You know, it's not teaching you what the mind should look like. It's teaching you how to build the mind to trade. But then if you go one further and say, you know something, I'm interested in this guy, let me take a look at his course. We have a group course coming up in September. I encourage you, if you're interested in building the mind, to take it. Okay? Now, I've got a typo. It says March 23rd. It's September 17th, friends. Okay? The key is that if you do early, you end up getting a free gift that has a $200 value. It's one of my emotional regulation workshops. And the key is, I want you to understand, when you take this group course, it starts at a dead run. You need to be studying for 2 weeks before you show up, because I'm assuming that you've already got the emotional regulation training down and you're working with it, and we're going to mindfulness. It's a powerful course. It really opens your eyes about what's really going on underneath the radar of your mind. Okay? I truly encourage that. Take a look at it. We also have an individual course. It's highly comprehensive, very personalized, and it's for people who are dead serious about it. Okay? Ultimately, what I want to do is invite you to this, and also I want to take your questions. But we have a few. Thank you very much for today. This is truly the missing piece for many traders like myself. I really appreciate that you present it not magic, but mindful, process-oriented. Well, that's the way it works, is that this is, your brain is an adaptive organism. And all it's done, it's adapted you as an organism to an environment, and it locked in because it was successful. Okay? It got those dopamine rushes, it habituated the responses, and now it's resistant to change. The difference between you and other animals is that for whatever reason, we can become designers of the mind that we bring. My dog is going to stay a dog. He's going to dog around, and pretty much he's going to chase deer, he's going to chase turkey, he's going to chase squirrels all around here, and the rabbits around where we live. Nothing's going to change. The human being can design the possibilities that they live in. You're going to need to do that in trading, okay? There's no way around it. And I hope that you take a look at this. I hope you explore it. And no matter what, I really hope that you become a good student of trading and recognize that ultimately, in order to be able to achieve the dreams of trading, is you're going to have to rework the mind that you bring to trading. And you literally are changing patterns. You're not changing thoughts. You're changing patterns that give rise to that. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for listening to me. And if I can help you, I really, really, really would like the opportunity of there. One quick question. I have found that I can put together streaks of winning 4 to 7 days at a time, but usually blow it with bad discipline. This seems to be what's needed. Yeah, I can tell you what the problem is, and it's a very common problem, is that most people don't realize that overconfidence, when you start winning and feeling good is dangerous to a trader. Okay, is that it's called euphoria. That's that mix of testosterone and dopamine. And no one would think, well, feeling good's bad for me? What do you mean? When I was speaking in China a couple years ago, I actually had people get up and leave the audience when a Chinese trader said, what are you saying? Are you saying that I can't feel good when I win? And my response to him, not when trading. And apparently they just didn't hold that view at all, and they were insulted, and they got up and left. And the next day, their stock market dropped 2%, and they were just crying because they had been feeling so good, but they didn't see the correction coming. So at any rate, the thing is I appreciate everything, and if I can help you, I'd like to have that opportunity. Meanwhile, I wish you good luck in trading, and I really wish that you would start really watching yourself trade and start noticing how your psychology is a component of your trading anyway, and unless you really work on it, you're not going to be able to achieve the dreams that you really want to in trading. So I thank you very, very much, and I apparently am finished a couple minutes early.